Continuing with our politics lead, we turn to the push by House Republicans to, at the very least, open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. On Wednesday, Republicans on the House Oversight Committee released a memo stating, quote, the committee has now identified over $20 million in payments from foreign sources to the Biden family and their business associates, end quote. The memo does not show any of that money going directly to Joe Biden, the president. We are joined now by the committee's chairman, Republican Congressman James Comer of Kentucky. Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us. So the memo alleges payments to Biden family members and associates, but not to President Biden himself. Your committee memo anticipates any pushback on this by stating, quote, President Biden's defenders purport a weak defense by asserting the committee must show payments directly to the president to show corruption, unquote. But respectfully, sir, you're the one who said repeatedly that this investigation is about President Joe Biden, not his family, over and over. Here's what you said last November.
I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, and that's where the committee will focus in this next Congress.
So let's posit for the sake of argument that Hunter Biden is sleazy and the president's relatives tried to profit off the Biden family brand, something CNN has reported on. What's new in this memo?
Well, before we released the memo, we interviewed Devon Archer, who is one of the associates who was partial owner of one of the shell companies that the Bidens were receiving money from foreign nationals and then laundering it into Biden bank accounts. So the associate Devon Archer testified that Joe Biden had, in fact, spoken to over 20 of the people who had wired the money to the Biden family members. Now, the reason that's important, Jake, is because the president said repeatedly he had never spoken to his son or anyone affiliated with his son in their business dealings. Now, there is no business. So what the business was, according to Devon Archer, was they were taking money from foreign nationals and they were marketing Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the brand. So that is the first associate that came in, implicated Joe Biden as being the reason they were getting this money. And the money is from bad people. The money is from people who are either incarcerated in the countries where they wired the money, or they are on the flee from being incarcerated. So we're concerned that the president is compromised because of the millions of dollars that his family's received. And remember, Jake, the president hasn't been truthful with the American people. First of all, he said he never communicated with these people. Devon Archer testified that he has 20 times, in fact, at least. And then he said that none of this money ever happened while he was vice president. We didn't know this at the beginning of the investigation, but what we know now is the overwhelming majority of the wire transfers happened while Joe Biden was vice president, and they happened days after he left those countries with foreign aid checks or talking about foreign aid. So there is a pattern here that should concern every American with respect to corruption in the White House.
Well, you definitely have made a case that the people who are around President Biden in terms of the lobbyists and his son Hunter have trafficked on that connection to the then vice president, now president. But I haven't yet seen any evidence that the president did anything wrong. Listen, you talk about Devon Archer, Hunter Biden's former business partner. Listen to something Devon Archer told Tucker Carlson earlier this month about Burisma. Now, Burisma, as people remember probably, that is that Ukrainian energy company that put Hunter Biden on its board while his father was vice president. Take a listen.
Did you ever, were you aware, do you have knowledge that Hunter spoke to his dad about Burisma?
Do I have knowledge?
Yes. Do you know that Hunter spoke to his dad about Burisma? Did you ever see them talk about it, hear them talk about it? Was Joe Biden?
No, I don't have knowledge of that, though I'd assume it.
You would assume it. So it's enough to be sitting at a meal at Lake Como with your new Ukrainian friends, and your dad happens to call. Let's put him on speaker.
That would be that's. I think that's enough. That's the second most powerful man in the world. It's just how the world works.
So it's assumptions, it's how the world works. But again, just looking for evidence, because we're talking about impeachment here, I don't see any evidence of any crime. And frankly, that is how the world works in Washington, D.C. And if you guys are going to launch an effort to try to reform Washington so people who are powerful can't have their wives and children and husbands and others traffic on that relationship, I'll be first in line to help you out. But it doesn't seem like you're trying to do that. It seems like you're trying to just go after President Biden.
No, we're trying to do that. That's been the goal from day one, is to have a legislative fix. A lot of the president's defenders, especially in the media, say that, well, this influence peddling is a cottage industry in Washington. Well, it needs to change. But let's just go back to not having any evidence of wrongdoing with Joe Biden. Look, 6 banks
By
said the
Joe
Biden
Biden.
family
Not like it certainly there's sleaze.
but
There's
look,
sleaze there. I'm saying,
I
what
don't
did the president do wrong, though?
Well, remember, when we started this investigation at the end of January, that's when I got subpoena power, the last week of January. The narrative was the laptop was Russian disinformation. Joe Biden's family never received money from China. Joe Biden's family never received any of this money while he was vice president. And Joe Biden never communicated with any of the people that sent his family this money. All 4 of those things have been proven false. So our investigation's already turned up a lot of information. Now, I think even though there may not be any curiosity by my friends at CNN, I think there's curiosity by a majority of Americans that, wait a minute, you're telling me
I'm very
Joe
curious
Biden's
about it, sir.
immediate-
I'm very curious about it.
Right.
And that's why I'm reading your reports. That's why I have you on the show.
And-
I just haven't seen.
And I appreciate it.
Look, here's the memo insists that even though there's no evidence Biden personally took the money, it doesn't get him off the hook. It calls the argument, quote, a hollow claim no other American would be afforded if their family members accepted foreign payments or bribes, unquote. Okay, fair enough. Let me play something that Chris Christie told our Caitlin Collins.
And look, the Trump family has been involved in grifting for quite some time. Jared Kushner, 6 months after he leaves the White House, gets $2 billion from the Saudi sovereign wealth fund when Donald Trump had put him in a position to be in the Middle East. What was Jared Kushner doing in the Middle East?
Again, sir, it all stinks to me. It all stinks.
Yeah. Look, and I've been vocal that I think that what Kushner did crossed the line of ethics. But what Christie said, it happened after he left office. Still no excuse, Jake, but it happened after he left office. And Jared Kushner actually has a legitimate business. This money from the Bidens happened while Joe Biden was vice president, while he was flying to those countries. He flew days after he left Romania. His family started receiving wires from a corrupt Romanian foreign national. Days, Jake, like 4 days after he left, including his granddaughter. What's his granddaughter doing getting a wire from a Romanian foreign national?
But
this is why we're investigating. And it's difficult, Jake. It's very difficult. The Biden attorneys are obstructing. They're intimidating witnesses. The DOJ will not cooperate with us. The FBI will not cooperate with us. The IRS will not cooperate with us. Thank God we had whistleblowers from the IRS testify in our committee that they were told to stand down by the DOJ.
sure,
Thank
we
God
had one of those whistleblowers on the show. Actually, we did an interview with him. I don't know if you knew that.
CNN's done a better job than a lot. That's why I'm on the show, and I'm a fan, Jake, and I'm working with you on this. But
All
I
right.
do think that there's certainly overwhelming evidence. Remember, there's a text message from Hunter Biden to his daughter complaining that he had to give his father half his salary. So we've gone through a lot of bank records.
Yeah.
We haven't gone through all the bank records, but look, we've caught Joe Biden in several lies, including that he never spoke with any of these corrupt people from these foreign countries that sent his family money. He had dinner with some of them, we found out in this. He had, so there's, I think, more than enough evidence to show that Joe Biden hasn't been truthful with the American people. And, he had knowledge that his family was money laundering. He had to. You think the Treasury?
Well, money laundering. Look, if there's evidence of money laundering, which is a crime, which is a federal crime, then obviously your committee should report it to the FBI and the Justice Department.
That's why the judge picked it out. That's one of the reasons the Delaware judge rejected the sweetheart plea deal. There was clearly violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act and money laundering.
Right. Republican Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, Kentucky. You'll come back when you got more to talk about.
We'll work with you, Jake.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.